Hello. Today I have the honor of showing you something extremely unique. There is, without a doubt, not a product on the market that can be compared to the weirdly named GPDI IR. Well, I have learned, because someone stopped by the studio and said, I had a GP preamp from Fryette. So there was a GP preamp at some point, and this is the GPDI for DI recording /IR, because it also has IRs. But if that was all, this would be an easy video, and trust me, this is not an easy video. This is one of the most unique products on the market. It is not competitively priced, as they say. This little thing clocks in at $1,200-$1,300, depending on, dollars, tariffs, whatever. And just like I did, it would be very easy to dismiss it and say, well, I don't need that. That's stupid. It's too expensive. So let me list a couple things that it is. It's a DI box. Well, it's a pretty damn expensive DI box, but yep, can be a DI box. It is an amplifier. It's sitting on a cab. Yep, you can actually drive a cab with it. Not like in New York and, it's different. You can drive a cab with it. It's a technically 3-voiced, 3-channel Fryette preamp that you can run into your amp for cable method or all that and add it to your amplifier. Fryette preamp. That's worth the, price of admission alone. It's a full Fryette amplifier, including power amp, with an internal load so that you can run it without a cab and run an analog speaker sim with an EQ on the front into your DAW for immediate no latency recording. It's a full Fryette amp that you can run without a cab attached, including a power amp, yes, it's in there, that you can run through IRs in addition to the analog speaker sim. But you can also record that whole thing as a DI signal. And it's also a reamping amplifier. Not a reamping box, but a reamping amplifier, so that you can go from your DAW, where you have recorded the dry DI signal, because it's also DI box, back into this thing, set it up, and change things later, maybe change IRs, whatever. So it's a full amplifier in a direct recording solution that also records your DI signal at the same time, analog speaker sim, digital speaker sim, and an effects loop, but can also be used, because it's very small and light, and put it on your amp and add those channels to your existing tube amp for live loudifying. All that is enough of a reason to really give it, the heading treatment and go through it. So this is, no. We're not gonna, no. First, we'll take it out of the box and you see how it arrives. As always, here's some product shots so you get the full glory. Okay, big question, of course, is does it do the job it's supposed to do? Put it on the table, plug in an IC cable, XLR out, nothing else attached, and go into your DAW and record a song with it, which is what it's supposed to do. A full tube amp that sits on your desk and is your recording device. No software, no menus, no firmware updates and all that bullshit. It's a real amp that you can play at home into your DAW or with a cab. So we did that. But of course, because it's Fryette, we're assuming I'm going to go raw. No, we did a really cool kind of a pop song with it, which I really dig. So let's check that out.
Just sounds so pure. GPDI at a cure should. Fryette free deliverance roar. Ultralinkers through the floor. Ion on the shaping skies. Table built with a magic
If you made it to this point, you're interested, which means we'll go through the front, the back, and then some sounds. And in a separate part, which I still have to record, I'm going to show you how the whole reamping thing works, which I personally don't do. I don't believe in reamping, but that's the function it has, so I'm going to try it for you. But that's coming later, and I can't comment on it right now. So let's look at the front panel. This whole section is the analog speaker sim. Analog cab and mic, says it right there. When that's out, this is giving the output in the back is giving you a DI signal after the amp, okay, not a dry DI after your guitar. But, and then you could record that and later on put a different IR if you wanted to. So this is with the analog speaker sim in, this is with the analog speaker sim out to then treat it differently later. You have low mid and high mid, it's all in the mids, emphasis for the top end, and then there's air or bite for the emphasis switch knob. This is your level for the out. It of course also has a headphone out. This is for the IRs, which we're going to see in the back has a separate output. And you select them. There's 4 banks of 4, whatever you want, and then hold this in long, and then it's on bank 2, preset 3. Pretty straightforward way to do it without a menu, and very nicely visualized. Down here is the amp section. We can pick from clean to deliverance, which is here Fryette Deliverance. It's a brilliant amp. More crunchy stuff, also high gainy. And then the pit bowl is all the gain you want. It's slightly differently voiced. And we have 2 different gains. They're kind of interdependent. More adds a whole other tube to the whole shebang, and less takes that tube out. These are interdependent gains. And we can see on the top that there are actually 4 tubes in there. I think 3 for the preamp, 1 for the actual 1 watt power amp. It has an actual 1 watt power amp in it, and it can drive a cab. Again, not the New York style cab. Still not funny, but it can do that. So it is a full amp in it, just not one that gets very loud. And then there's an internal load. So we're loading it down. We're sucking up that power after the whole thing went through an actual Fryette amp, 1 watt, and then running it through these different output options. Furthermore, we have a 3-band EQ. And what do we have here? Deep or tight switch for the low end, if you want a metal or fill. And then you can say whether you have it normal or on an external amp. We're going to get to that when we look in the back. This is the master volume, which also drives the level, so they're kind of interdependent. So if you're running it on a cab where I want it a little bit louder, then this was overloading, so I don't know if you want to do both at the same time. And the dynamics are kind of doing a sag thing, so you want it nice and tight or more squishy, I don't know in what direction. And the dynamics are this coming in here, this little light over there shows you your input in terms of how hard you're hitting the whole thing. With USB-C right here, which is great, we are loading different IRs. Now we're going to look in the back, and there's a lot because it's Fryette and they don't save on the features. Foot switch doesn't come with one, but that's likely for switching between this and your actual preamp in your amp if you're doing the 4-cable method. Speaker out is not fully plugged in now, but we're going to do that. I have to pull that out because the volumes are different for, again, I don't want to run both at the same time. So then we have an XLR out for the IR, the digital cab simulation. And at the same time, we've got an unbalanced line for the same thing. So you can run either or at the same time. Down here, we got the analog speaker sim out, also with its corresponding 1/4 inch. Very nice. It's not either or. It's not a switch in the front. You can run both at the same time and also run them with 1/4 inch. When you're coming from your DAW, there's a reamp in. Combo jack as it should be. Absolutely beautiful XLR or 1/4 inch. Here is the effects loop with the level. Don't know if the level is correct. That is connected to my trusty TC Electronic. Rest in peace. Sorry, but who knows what's happening with them. 2290p, which is on the floors delay. Right there. Leslie's on it. Wow. Then we have 2 amp input. Again, if you're running it as a preamp, which you would switch on the front to amp, that's going to your amp. And then that's going to be connected to your amp's effects loop so that you can incorporate this preamp into your amp. And this is the direct out XLR going into your DAW so that there you can get the tube DI. So it's the clean guitar signal before it hits any of it. And then you can run that later through it again to change things. Less gain, more treble, what a different IR. You can just grab a different version. So count with me. You can grab the actual dry DI of the guitar to reamp later in a big studio, which people do because you don't have that amp, you don't have the cabs, whatever. You let the producer do their thing. I don't like that personally because I think you have to feel the amp that's going to be on the album when you're playing it. But in metal, that's being done. So grab that. On a second track, grab the IR. Might be totally good enough for the mix, totally fine. So then you have what you need for the mix. And mix that in, possibly, with the analog speaker sim. Or maybe only use the analog speaker sim for your headphone mix or whatever you're hearing because it's latency free and will allow you to play more tightly. Or mix it in with the IR, or mix these with the reamped signal later. You will have 3 separate signals. This is a complicated video later on. Once you wrap your head around what this is, nothing does what this does. DI out, reamping, it's a preamp, Fryette style, record IRs, record analog speaker sim for no latency. All that in Fryette quality, made in the US for $1,200-1,300. Which at first glance, as a DI recorder, you could say, well, I can buy you a pedal for $400. Yep, absolutely. And they're great. Like Tony the Tiger says, they're great. But they're not that. Nothing is that. No modeler is that, because they will have latency in their fake. They are simulations. They are profiles. This is an actual Fryette amp. Stephen Fryette is a complete mad genius. He's also completely mad. Yeah, hi Stephen. But the biggest challenge for Fryette and the GPDI/IR, it's a stupid name, Stephen. Call it Herbert or something. No, that's a Dietzel thing. Call it Frank. Call it Hieronymus or the Cool Box. But nobody can remember GPDI/IR. I've been working with this thing for weeks and I still can't. So let's get what we can get in here. And we're going to start with sound in the room. You can't really see it, but the nice folks from Raw Rock from Belgium sent me this 112 cab, Raw Rock. Go to the website. It's got ports on the side. It's got, it's pretty fat sounding. And it's a special bracing inside. We're going to get to that cab in a separate video. But I got this here in for bedroom recording. You could put a mic in front of it. Or actually bedroom playing, 1 watt, totally fine. Practicing at home with a real amp, and you don't actually need the big amp. This is cool because it is not going to be so loud that anyone's going to have an issue with it. We're not close micing the cab. I've got my trusty AEA R88A ribbon right over there. And that's what we're using to mic this at about 1 meter away, just to get a bit of room tone. I'm unplugging the DI for now. And this is... We also have a pedalboard on the floor, which we're actually going to try now. This, of course, is a Fibonacci Erotic, an absolute masterpiece of guitar that they built for me. I love these people. And that's what we're using right now in single coil mode. With this cab, in this combination, I kind of wish for a bright switch and get more brightness. But that's just me. We've got a pedal board on the floor here. We're going to put on the Galaxy. Nice. This is what you would experience in the room. Drip Screamer. And guess what? This feels nothing like a modeler, because it isn't. It ain't. There's no modeling anywhere here. And obviously, there's quite a bit of the gain to be had. If I actually warmed up before I did these things, I might be able to play. So this is in the room with the 112 cap. Not massively loud. Still loud enough to annoy your wife, husband, significant other. But that's just the icing on the cake. Going to unplug the cap now. Go to IR. That's going into the other room where Leslie is switching. Thank you, Leslie. And, would it be nice to, reciprocate the thank you? Like polite people would say, you're welcome. Yeah, uh-huh. Mm-hmm. So I've got an RCF speaker there. And now, yeah, that IR cap is more bright than the raw rock on the floor. Damn, that sounds good. That's the IR now. I'm going to put the Galaxy in front of it. That is jazz. And so on. Jazz, you can't do that. Nice. Let's put the other thing called Troop Screamer in front of it. That's the clean shell. How far can that go? Careful, that's why you get the red light. Push that again with the Troop Screamer. When you play guitar, you gotta do something with your fingers, I don't know. That's the clean channel. I love the cleans of the Deliverance, because that is sparkly, plexi-ish cleans. Let's see. Always gotta adjust the volumes and stuff. More fullness here with gain 2. I was on the wrong pickup. just great. This is a killer clean. EQ, what does that do? That rhymes. Likely way more effective when we're hearing it driving. Well, the mids do the mids. Does the job. Now, let's get that deliverance to rock. Humbucker. That's already way too much for that kind of stuff. If it's a bit too woofy, go to the tight instead of the deep. Okay, there's a more switch. That's all just good. Pitbull. I love the Pitbull. Look, folks, try to get that out of any kind of modeler. You have to experience this. It's ridiculously good. With a Tube Screamer. Back it off just a little bit. Go through the IRs. manual it says something about Fane and Fryette and what calves they are and backs and fronts, and I don't care. Just listen. Fact is, there's fat ones and thinner ones, and more midsy ones, and more top endy ones, and more low endy ones. So you pick whatever works. And obviously, all those sounds, you know, less of that, and then less of that, but more of that, and then... Killer sounds, killer. We're going to the analog DI, which is no latency because it's all analog. Speed of light, as they say. And that is directly related to the master. And that right now sounds like shit because it's off, so you can put your own AR behind it, right? Old school analog stuff. Output's quite a bit more hefty than the other one. That's high mid bite. I expected it to be awesome for the clean, but it's not. Wait. That's all I can show you here. That's already a shit ton. And remember, you can record both of these at the same time. Your input levels on your audio interface, careful with those because the output level for the analog speaker sim is quite hefty. If the master is, I mean, you gotta juggle those. Might want to use a pad on that input, but you can also record the DI out at the same time and then reamp, which is something I'm going to try now in my little office. Come with me. Okay, kind of a creepy lighting vibe happening here, but that's fine. So I'm in my little editing room and I hooked up the Valvulator GPDI/IR, different names, Stephen, to my Apollo X4. So you will need an audio interface with, in this case, at least 3 inputs and a routable output to do the reamping. So the way I've got it set up right now is the DI out, which is just the dry guitar for reamping later, into input 1, then the IR out into input 3, the analog cab sim into input 4. And we can record all 3 at the same time. And then I'm sending out of line out 1 back into the reamp input. Okay? Reamp input will be active once you pull the cable on the front. I just tested the setup. It works. I'm going to show you what I think works and what I think doesn't work. The analog cab sim along with the IR, I see that as slightly problematic in terms of levels. It's totally fine. The only thing I had to pad was the DI input. So I'm going to show you quickly here on the console. I'll label this for you. We've got a DI input right here. And that is padded, right? Nothing on 2. We've got IR and analog, and you can see IR I cranked up a bit, analog I just left all the way down there. The only thing we are hearing right now is the IR, which makes sense. You could say you want to hear the analog for the low latency. To me, I'd rather have the sound other than the latency. In Cubase, for each guitar part, that's the downside to it. You need a lot of tracks. I usually record 1 track and I make the decision beforehand. But if you're into something like this, then you're not the person that wants to do that. So I have an IR for the left, an analog for the left, a DI for the left, and then a reamped track for the left. And we have the same for the right. If you're quadruple tracking guitars, you're going to end up with 4x4 and so on. And on the input side, I have a get IR, get analog, get DI in there, of course, accepting the inputs as I explained. So now if I'm tracking, what I will do is these 3 tracks, and let's see what happens. To monitor, I will turn on the IR. I think that's how that works. Okay. Going to mute the DI track. Going to mute the analog track. And let's listen to that. Okay, that's the IR. That's the analog. Beautiful. And I'm going to reroute this quickly over here. DI, stereo. And we can hear here's our DI. Okay, beautiful. So if we listen to the analog and the IR at the same time, because there is no latency on the analog, but a latency on the IR, which isn't, and the analog obviously isn't compensated, they will be out of phase, as we can hear right now. Drastically out of phase. So what you would have to do is, if you want to mix these 2 together, which honestly, I don't see a reason why you would do that, you're going to have to go in and adjust the phase. Going to have to go and do, there's a little peak here. That's a perfect peak. And we're moving these two peaks on top of each other. And now they should be perfectly in phase. But does that actually sound good? So let's set them at the same level, right? Sonically speaking, I don't see any reason to do that because it's actually better, more powerful, more low end when they're not mixed together. So the analog speaker sim for a lower latency performance when you're playing fast stuff, I get, and turning it off and actually recording a DI track without anything on it so that later you can apply an IR to that track, I think for me, if I were to do that, would be the way that I were to do that, if you know what I mean, okay? And that's how we're going to track it from now on. So I shall track that again. No, I don't really have to, because I have a version here, so I could actually do this and in one take. So I'm going to assign that to reamp. So the DI is now going to reamp. I will pull the cable, and now on analog, I can re-record it with the analog speaker sim off. And on reamped, I can go to a different cab. Gonna put these two in record, and let's do that. Should work. It didn't, because it was muted. It helps when it's not muted. Doesn't matter how long you're doing all this, you always make mistakes. Now we can mute it, and very clearly mute it. We can check out the analog. Obviously ghastly, so I'm going to mute that, but it will give me the option to later go in and apply a different IR if what I now have with the reamping still isn't right, or the mix engineer to go and say, well, this is actually a great guitar sound, but we do need a different IR. These options are there. So what you're getting with this, quite a bit of extra work if you ask me, you're getting options. But with options also comes option paralysis. So here's the new one. Well, the new one should be too late because I moved the old one. So let's phase align the new one, because maybe mixing those two is a good idea. There's our peak. There's our peak. I still don't think one should combine two. One of them is fine. Okay, but you could see I easily could reamp that. And actually now, this is the one I like, I'm going to record it again on the other side, because I have what I need now. And now we're doubling that. Open this up. Bam, bam, bam. Double that shit. Now we have the DI as backup. We have the DI without any cab on it as backup for the other side and the other performance. And these are now the same IR. Technically, this would have to be phase aligned as well. However, it's not the same performance, and really whatever latency is there, I don't care. It's very, very, very minimal. Now we got a nice fat recording. Now, obviously, in addition to changing the IR, which I did on the Reamp, you can change the settings, change EQ, change gain, make any kind of changes you want. So this as a tabletop interface for your tabletop amp, not interface, tabletop amp that interfaces with your interface for guitar recording, handing off to producers later, handing off to reamping studios. Once you have it wired up and you figured out how this works, you could probably even, is this heat-wise? Nah, I wouldn't put the Apollo on top of it. But I mean, this is a relatively small setup that allows you to do all the super advanced stuff that usually requires a splitter, a DI box, a reamping box, an amp, an attenuator, an IR loader. It's all of that. Back to me. And I'm going to assume that was awesome because I haven't in my time done it, yet you've seen it. So I can't comment on what that was, but I assume, given Fryette, that it was awesome. So the bottom line is, when I saw this, I was like, who needs this? Over $1,000? Really? But it's an amp to play in a room. And it's good sounds. Okay. But it's also an IR loader for this full Fryette 1-watt amp. Okay. But also analog speaker sim for that grindy, vintagey, 80s-y sound. Mix it in, have no latency, immediate response, record it, use it, don't use it, shape it, don't shape it, record the DI with it, send those tracks to a studio, reamp another amp, or reamp this one, fiddle with it, change IRs later. All the options are there. With this, nothing can happen to your sound. You can shape it yourself by reamping. You can reamp something else in a different studio. A good DI box will run you $300. Reamp box, same thing. An amp will run you more. We haven't even done this, and we're not gonna. This is a Fryette preamp that you can run into your amp, 100 watt, whatever. You can run this into, oh look, Fryette power station, and make it loud that way. Even shape and color are matching. I'm a convert. This is a great tool. Now, honestly, is it a tool that I'm going to be using? Well, I think I have to send this back. And also, I always review whatever I'm reviewing at the moment. So it doesn't make sense. But actually, for pedal videos, this would be great. This would be great as a tool for many things I do here. So if I were to keep it, I could absolutely find users, even though I have a shit ton of other gear. But for the guitar player on the go to a studio, have your sounds. For someone who doesn't have the ability to mic a cab at home, for someone who doesn't have the 100-watt amp and can mic it and has a power station and an IR loader, if you don't have all this stuff, but you want a real amp, not modeling stuff, that is the only thing on the market that does what it does. And it does it, of course, really well. Well built by good people. What else can I say? I can say use my links there below. That really helps. Subscribe to the channel. That massively helps. Thank you so much. And thank you, Stephen Fryette and Jürgen Kirchner, for your trust in me reviewing these complicated products. That being said, I'm out, and Adam's at the end.